Welcome, everybody, to the Decentralized Tech live stream. I am John Radoff. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Beamable. We are a decentralized physical infrastructure network, DPIN project for the game industry. We're game servers, backend, live services, all the things you need to build a game. And today I'm talking about decentralized tech again, this time with Graham from a really cool company called Spexi. They are also a DPIN company doing something absolutely completely different with drones, and it's super cool, and I can't wait for you all to learn about this. You know, when I was with the founders of Spexi at, I think it was in Dubai. Yeah, it was in Token 49 in Dubai. We met each other. The cool thing I thought about it is when I looked at the interface to Spexi, it had all these cool hexagons, and I was like, that's like an old school map-based game, and I saw like an almost gamified aspect to using this. But I don't want to jump the gun too much. We're going to learn about Spexi and what's cool about it. And everybody here, by the way, like if you're curious about DPIN, if you're curious about drones, because we're going to be talking about that, anything around decentralized tech, the reason we do this live is so that you get to ask your questions. So please ask those questions, put them in chat, and we bring those right on the air. We had so many questions yesterday, and Oscar, you got some feedback going on.
Just batting 1,000 today. Apologies.
Yeah, we got a few technical difficulties, but that's live TV and that's the internet. And on top of it, we're on X, which is not always the most stable platform. So we're taking all the risks, and we're talking about Web3. So we're doing everything that's cool and different and right on, not the leading edge, the bleeding edge. Because if you aren't doing this and you don't have a few wounds, then I don't know what we've been doing in Web3.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's take a step back here. Graham, let's meet you. What have you done before you got to this point in time where you were working on Spexi? Like what got you excited about Web3, drones, all of this tech? And then we'll dive into Spexi after people get to know you a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Graham, ops, what I'm called now, the ops manager at Spexi. Not one of the core founders, but it was a little bit of a match made in heaven, sort of for my hobbies and interests along with my career. And so I come at it from two different paths. 2017, I found through a friend, through a random Facebook post, I found Web3, cryptocurrency, as it was called more colloquially at the time. Literally a Facebook post from a high school friend saying he had quit his job and bought a van and was going to be driving across Canada. And if he knew anyone on his route that they should drop a comment and he would stop in and say hi. This is my story into Web3, crypto, DPIN, blockchain, the whole space. And I was living in Toronto area at the time. He had quit his job because he had cashed out after a Bitcoin run, and he had made some money in fairly early crypto. And he was going on an adventure with an old Chevy camper van. And I dropped a comment and said, "Hey, if you're coming through the GTA, stop in and say hi." And so a couple of weeks later, he did just that. And at the time, we started talking. He's a bit of a tech head, and we started talking. He actually ran a kind of video podcast similar to this for a little while called Ed and Ethan, talking about Web3 back 2012, 2013, 2014 time. I don't know the exact dates, honestly. Anyways, he stopped in and we started talking about different sort of application ideas and things like that. I had a small business at the time, but he was obviously big into crypto, and he started sharing a little bit of that with me. He continued on his trip after a couple of days staying with us, we had this idea percolating, and I had a basement suite. He said, "Well, if it's all right with you, could I come back and stay in your basement suite and we'll sort of dabble in this idea?" And I went, "Sure, yeah, that sounds great." And when he came back, he offered to pay a portion of the rent in Bitcoin, right? And I knew nothing about it, but I was like, "Sure."
This worked out well for one of you and not the other over time.
Yeah, we're still very good friends at both. But I said, "Yeah, you can pay a little bit of the rent in this cryptocurrency and teach me about it and whatever." So got my first wallet set up, and it's 2017. Bitcoin's going from I missed Bitcoin, I thought, because it had gone from $22 to $2,800 a coin. And so I was, that's out of my price range. It's too expensive. Maybe I can catch Ethereum, right, at the time, 180 or $200. And so, he spent some time. We did start working on this little project, but then the sort of the whole ICO craze happened, and we both started doing that. We never really got our project off the ground. We just started, doing all sorts of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin stuff. And so that was my introduction into that, and rode some waves up and down. And a couple of years passed. I actually moved to South America for a bit, where my wife's from, where I met a new friend who had a DJI Spark, a small drone. And, we were out, he showed me how to fly it one day, and I thought that was just the coolest thing I had ever seen. I had no idea that the advances drone technologies had made sort of from 2013, 14, when they were still very unstable, and it was like a GoPro mounted on a home built type of thing, to like 2018, where you had these consumer units that you could buy off the shelf that were very stable and controlled with a phone. And I just went, wow, this is incredible. And again, I said to him, like, we should start some sort of little business, training or education. You can see my entrepreneurial like ideas, type of personality coming out in this story, because everywhere I see a cool technology, I jump into it. I'm like, how do you do that? How does that work? So, we started looking, at whatever the space had for drones at the time. And I still had kind of cryptocurrency going as a hobby. I was trying to do some, arbitrage trading with Bitcoin and things like that. But mostly after the sort of 2018 crash, I had let that be a sidebar, and I was doing other stuff. And so I got into drones, and at the end of that year, I was moving back to Vancouver. And so I started applying to some jobs at drone companies, and I got a job as a business development lead at a small drone business. The guy he had 7 or 8 drones, and he would do construction imaging and real estate photos and videos. And he was just getting into mapping and LiDAR and stuff like that, sort of higher end survey work with drones, but he didn't really know the space, and neither did I. But I came out of this sales and business development background. I said, well, I'll help you. I'll learn all about it. I'll help you grow the space. I think it's really cool. I think it's got a lot in front of it. So I joined him, spent kind of the first 6 months just like crash course on like GIS and drones and imaging and ortho imagery and mapping and 3D point clouds and all the things that you could do. Just sort of taught myself and called everybody that I knew that might have an inkling about what the space could offer or what you could do with the drone. And we were building that business up for him. There was kind of 4 or 5 of us with different, wore a lot of hats and flew a lot of drones and took on a lot of pilot projects. So it was like, well, we think a drone would be able to do this, so let's try it out, and found some different companies and organizations that were willing to do that with us and take those journeys with us. And that small company was acquired in 2021 by a larger sort of drone firm that was doing, through mergers and acquisitions, was building a kind of a drone conglomerate across North America. So moved into a BD role with that bigger firm. And around 2022, I saw the announcement for the seed round fundraise for what Spexi was doing. And I had since in 2020, 2021 gotten back into crypto with DeFi Summer and with NFTs and with all these things. So I have this thing, I go to work every day and I sell drones and I talk drones, and I'm trying to make a drone business work. And as soon as I shut off work every day, I'm in crypto, and I'm deep in DeFi, and I'm on the Binance Smart Chain, and I'm trading NFTs. And I see this announcement out of Vancouver, where I'm living, Vancouver, Canada, that Spexi has just raised $5.5 million to create a decentralized DePIN drone network. And Spexi at the time is like 10 or 12 employees. They have sort of a legacy drone software platform, but they're trying to figure out how to scale this thing globally and create standardized imagery. And I just went like that's everything that I do, right? But that's John, you're muted there.
You're doing crypto, you were doing drones, and Spexi put it all together. Yeah. And you met some of these folks originally, or some of the things you were doing.
I knew Alec and Bill, who are 2 of the founders of Spexi. I knew them digitally because Vancouver drone space was fairly small. Spexi was another drone company, that drone software company. Alec also had a training business who was supposed to join us today. I'm not sure he'll be able to. He might drop in a little bit. I literally, it was a LinkedIn message. I said to Alec, I said, we have to talk. I sent Alec a LinkedIn message because we were LinkedIn connections. And I said, he kind of went, okay, why? We had friends of friends and knew people in the industry. And he said, okay, well, let's, give me a call. I said, there's a handful of people in the world that know, like, I look at what you're doing and I get it. I get it from start to finish. I understand the complexities of the drone space and of operations and the difficulty in regulations and of getting pilots and of trying to collect all this data. But I also understand cryptocurrency and NFTs and DePIN and why you might want to do this in a decentralized way and what the blockchain can bring to your idea, to the business idea. So that was like I say, a match made in heaven a little bit. Like, you don't very often see, there wasn't even a job. I just said, you have to hire me because I have to work with you guys.
Well, we have to talk about Spexi and what you do now. And by the way, again, I want to repeat the message out to our audience here. So we've got over 600 people that have tuned in live. So this is your opportunity to ask questions about drones, about crypto, about a really interesting DePIN project that brings those two things together that you're about to learn about. So definitely get those questions ready. I see one from Third Animage coming in already. We'll get your question after the intro that we're going to go through here. But I was inspired by this road trip intersection that you had in Canada. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be doing a Canadian road trip for the first couple of weeks of August with my fiance. So I don't know, maybe I'll meet a wayward crypto person in that process that'll change my whole future trajectory.
It honestly did. It did change the trajectory of my life. Just this one Facebook comment on a Facebook post. Really, I always go kind of down to that point.
That's the butterfly effect right there. Okay, Graham, let's talk about Spexi. Explain what you guys do.
Yeah, so we have developed, and continue to grow a DePIN, for lack of a better sort of niche or space, a decentralized network of drone pilots. We develop the software, and we're a marketplace software. So much like an Airbnb would match a guest to a host, or an Uber would match a rider to a driver, we sort of match a drone pilot to a collection task, except we do it at this broad scale. So using what's called an H3 grid, which was actually developed by Uber. Some people might be familiar, and it's what you noticed in the application, these hexagons that lay over a map. We can add an automated drone mission to these hexes that grid out over the entire area of interest geography. Call it, city of, right? We started in Vancouver, city of Vancouver. So over the whole city, we lay out these hexagons are about 25 acres. And in them, our software loads an automated flight mission. And then any drone pilot using the specific drones that we integrate with, so anybody, we don't have to know them like an Uber driver. I mean, an Uber driver, know a little bit about them, but anyone can sign up to the platform, take their off-the-shelf consumer-grade drone, approach that mission zone, collect the data, hands off, like the flight software automates the flight and data collection. And then when they upload it, they get a reward, right? They're rewarded. So it is very much gamified and has lots of opportunities for the collection portion being a game, like a Pokemon Go, right? You go out in the world, you move around, you take your drone, you capture some images, you share those images back with our network, and you're rewarded for it currently in cash, but moving towards this blockchain and this token generation event.
And maybe it's worth kind of talking about that business model for a moment. So people are familiar with, I think for the Web3 people who are on this talk, which is probably just about everybody given the topic of decentralized technology, a lot of people have been exposed to play to earn, walk to earn, run to earn, like all these to earn things.
Yeah.
The fundamental issue with a lot of these things is, where does the sustainability come from? From play to earn kind of has played out as almost a Ponzi-nomics kind of structure in a lot of games. That said, it could work. It's not to say that it can't work in the right kind of games. Like if you look at EVE Online, which is not a Web3 game, like they probably could build that kind of economy because there's so much like work that actually happens that fuels this massive economy that they've got there. So in a big enough economy, I think play to earn could actually work. And in fact, the founders of EVE Online are trying to build a game that I think is going to do that. But then like walk to earn, like, but you guys have a business model. Like there's a commercial market for this data that you're collecting, I think is what it comes down to. Could you just maybe talk about like what that market is, what they need, how your project kind of fills that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I totally agree. I mentioned before we went live that I still have some Axes rotting in a wallet somewhere that, I haven't opened in a couple of years and, paid way too much for at the time when that was the big rage. And so I know, I went through the space and again, this is part of the value that I think that I bring to the Spexi team, some of whom are more crypto sort of native than others, but it's really this understanding of the space and that, as much as it is magical internet money, it's not magical internet money. You need a business model. You need money flowing in and money flowing out. It has to be a real economy. And so that's one of the things that I really liked about what I saw with Spexi is this is a multi, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollar business already, right? There's already an industry around Earth imaging, right? Geospatial imaging, aerial observation from satellites to airplanes and helicopters. And the challenge, the thing that nobody has solved for yet, and something that I learned in the drone space is very difficult to solve for, is standardizing a layer of imagery at the drone level. So the easiest way that people will understand is when you open Google Earth or Google Maps and you see that world in the middle of it and you zoom into the world. You actually start when you're way zoomed out, it's like a rendering. It's not even a real picture. And then you get to a satellite level. And so you can move around the Earth and you can see the whole world that has been captured by satellites. And Google has aggregated all of that and rendered the Earth through a bunch of satellite imagery from their own satellites and imagery that they purchased from other organizations. And as you continue to zoom in, you'll actually see that you go to airplane imagery at a certain level. You go to this imagery captured by airplanes. And if you notice, you go to a city, if you go to Los Angeles, you're going to get really pretty good resolution. But if you go out into the mountains, right, near Los Angeles, you're going to get much worse resolution. And that's because the airplanes don't fly nearly as much at nearly as high a resolution out there because there's less value. But all of that is a huge industry and economy where Google is buyer number one, but then Google's selling that through APIs to all sorts of entities. And there's a whole bunch of other buyers. Google's not the only player in that space, right? These are big players that are buying geospatial data, Earth imagery data for a whole host of reasons, from planning and emergency management to city planning and infrastructure mapping and management to you can't even imagine how many industries use imagery data of the Earth. They just need to know where something is, or they want to know where something is. And as you go below, the best resolution that airplanes grab is maybe like 7 to 10 centimeters. You've got companies, multi-million-dollar companies, Vexel and Eagle Mapping, and there's a whole bunch of organizations that move airplanes around the country and around the world, and they fly these imagery flights, and they collect this imagery and they sell it to Google and they sell it to cities and they sell it to these different organizations that buy imagery. And that's the best imagery that exists in the marketplace right now, is this 7 to 10 centimeter imagery that costs tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars to collect, and a manned aircraft to show up in your city, or maybe it's from near your city and it flies this grid pattern over your city and captures a bunch of images, and they put it all together and they give you this map. And
contrast that with the resolution you can get to with a drone.
Yeah, I mean, you could get to, we fly at 3 centimeters, so a little over twice as fine.
Mm-hmm.
You can go lower with the drone. We fly at an altitude that doesn't allow for, you run into privacy issues essentially. At some point you run into like you're peeking in someone's window, right? So you can fly as low as you want with a drone, but we do this balance where we fly at 80 meters. We get about a 3 centimeter resolution, which it's actually dumbed down enough to not be able to recognize a face, run facial recognition, not be able to read a license plate or a home address or things like that, because that sort of abstracts us from some privacy entanglements like Google's needing to blur people and needing to do certain things like that. So you can get really, really good imagery of the drone. What's hard to get with a drone, because of limitations in technology and battery life and regulations and a whole bunch of things, what's hard to get is the same imagery over a big scale, right? Because I might own a drone with a 1 centimeter camera that captures at 48 megapixels, and you might own a drone with a 3/4 inch sensor that captures at 24 megapixels, and Oscar has a different drone. So all of that aggregated data doesn't stitch together, doesn't talk to each other well. So what Spexi is solving for is that standardization of imagery across a broad scale. So now you can look at a whole city and all of the data looks the same. Right? It's all captured by sensors that are the same or similar. It's all aggregated, and now you have this smooth, seamless layer of data over an entire city that a buyer like a Google or like an Apple Maps might be interested in purchasing, because previously they didn't have a way to buy from all these small local operators and aggregate that data in a way that made any sense financially.
So we've got a lot of questions coming in about fly to earn as the model. So as the drone pilot, can you maybe explain how that works for them? How do they get paid? What do they get paid for?
Yeah, so actually currently we're one of the few DPINs, and we're racing towards a TGE here, a token generation event, but we currently pay in cash. So we're North America only right now, Canada and the USA. When we essentially launch an area of interest, we lay this grid map over an area of interest. Local pilots, or in some cases, these pilots have started traveling around and sort of chasing our launches. The missions open, they enter the zone, they become live, and they have an associated cash reward to them. So usually $8 to $12 per mission, which takes about 7 to 10 minutes to fly a mission. So active pilots on the network are earning like $40 to $60 an hour while they're flying the drone in cash, and that's through Stripe, the digital payment services provider is integrated into our app currently. We are haven't announced a date yet, but before the end of the year, looking to do a token generation event, at which point the cash payments will disappear. We'll move to a blockchain payment rail, a token-based payment rail, and that will allow for, among other things, easier expansion and international expansion, and facilitate some larger programs.
So I'm really curious about where the token, where the whole Web3 aspect fits in. We'll come back to that. But another question coming in from Nancy here is, what is the spec of the drone for this? And I kind of have almost an associated question. So not only what is the spec of the drone, my understanding from our conversation a couple months back is you actually have to be a licensed pilot, drone pilot, to be able to do this as well. This isn't for people who just buy the drone from Amazon and are screwing around, probably breaking a lot of laws in the process, but no one really seems to monitor this stuff.
A little bit of both. Interesting, it was a really interesting unlock for this space, and this project was the creation of the micro drone class, which is a sub 250 gram drone. So it's like the best toy drone you can buy. But it is in Canada, and this is, we started in Canada, and we had hoped this would be worldwide. It didn't get picked up everywhere. In Canada, there are not no regulations, but very, very few regulations on micro drones, because they're considered essentially a toy. So in Canada, anyone can order a drone from Amazon or pick it up at Best Buy and start flying that same day. And there are no legal licensing requirements. We recommend that you go through some basic airspace training. We offer some quick safety tips, just things to be aware of. Obviously, we are operating in airspace with airplanes and helicopters and manned aviation and buildings and things that cranes. But in Canada, you can buy a drone, you can sign up, and you can be flying same day if we have missions available in your area. Well, we just launched missions this week in Burnaby, British Columbia, a refresh there. We launched some missions in Boulder, Colorado this week, so we have pilots flying there. And I can share the map in a minute, but if anyone would like to look themselves, the link is explorer@spexi.com.
Yeah, let's look at the map live, because I think that would be cool to take a look at. So I didn't realize that Canada was basically the Wild West when it came to drones. So that's kind of fun.
When you as soon as you go above 250 grams, there's a licensing regimen. The difference, and it's actually the same in the U.S. The interesting distinction that the U.S. made was the purpose of the flight. So if the purpose of the flight is commercial in nature, so if you're being paid or trading anything in kind, you have to have a license regardless of the drone size. So in the US, it's actually the same. You can go to Best Buy, buy a micro drone, fly it. That's fine. Recreational hobbyists, if you want to go, just pick up a drone.
Like
and use
a remote control airplane, it's a toy as far as the FAA is concerned, right there.
Right. But as soon as you are paid, or as soon as you are being, remunerated for your efforts, then you have to have a license. And so, there was some debate internally about how much of that responsibility and liability do we take on ourselves? How much of that do we put on the pilot to confirm that they are meeting the legal requirements? And we did decide in the US to verify that they had a Part 107. It's called a Part 107 certificate from the FAA, which is the licensing. So in the US, to fly with Spexi, you do need to have a Part 107 license. There's a process there. There's some studying and exam you have to do to get that license. So you would, if you were starting from scratch and you knew nothing about drones, you'd be at least a couple of weeks to go through the studying and the licensing to get yourself set up with a mini drone to fly. But the cost of those drones, we work right now with the DJI Mini 2, Mini 3, or Mini 4. They sort of range from like about $400 to $1,200, depending on the unit you get and the setup and the kit. So it's very in line with what you might expect from like a GeoNet miner, or from a Wingbits miner, or even a little bit more maybe than a Helium platform, but similar to a Weather XM station. Mm-hmm. You're looking at that like $500 to $800 range to get your kit set up to start participating in the network. And so I see we've got the Explorer up here. All the pink areas are areas that we've launched some missions. As you zoom in, you'll see the hex grid start to show up. If you head to Boulder, Colorado, it's the most live right now. And really exciting was yesterday was the first time we launched on the network missions that are for points only. We get immediately into sticky territory when we start talking about points with the TGE coming up, but we now have missions that are cash and missions that are points. So you go north of there is Boulder. You see a little bit of color up top. That's all locked. So the purple color means those are done. We flew all of Denver in February.
And if you zoom into there you go, the hex map. I just love this map because it reminds me of playing any number of war games back in the day.
So what you're seeing there is purple is locked. Somebody's flown it. Gold is available, open, and there's a reward associated. So if you click on a gold, not the brown, the gold. Yeah, gold, chase the money. So that flight would have that would have an $8 associated US dollar reward. It would take about 7 or 8 minutes to collect that data for the drone to run its flight plan. Those brown ones, that means the pilot has flown them recently, but they haven't given us the data yet. So if you click on that brown one, you'll see a flight time, July 11th, that's today. And if you hover over the July 11th, what time did he fly that? 11:25 a.m. So about an hour and a half ago, that was flown by a pilot. So we can see the pilot's flying and collecting the data. And then when they upload it, it turns purple and it locks, right? So now we have that imagery. So as a network, we know which, and then the pink is a reservation. So a pilot has said, I'm going to fly this. So we have about 5 or 6 pilots flying right now today in Boulder. We don't necessarily know who they are. Some of them are in our Discord server. They talk to us. We have a community. We have conversations, but we might know, we might not know. But there are 5 or 6 pilots flying in Boulder, collecting that data and uploading that imagery for the rewards. So
I feel like this model, it's really obvious why you do this as a drone photography project, basically, but there's a lot of DPIN projects that depend on a certain amount of geographic distribution of their nodes, particularly the actual hardware. I'm thinking right now, like beam, don't quite add this to the roadmap, anybody yet, but thinking out loud, like a geographic distribution map where maybe we could create a token incentive, for example, where if you get your node out into like a heavily utilized gaming region, we probably need a checker node there that's low latency and available to check things locally. So maybe there's an idea in there for us in terms of our network rollout.
Yeah, the gaming tie-in that we've found interesting enough, and I learned this probably more recently. Maybe should have realized it was that we're all likely familiar with Pokemon Go, and so you go out into this augmented reality world, looking through your phone, and you see these Pokemons, and you capture them. What I didn't know was that the company that made Pokemon Go, Niantic, was using that information to create mapping data. right? That whole game is designed to get people to go out and essentially scan the world with their phones in areas of interest. So you place a rare Pokemon. If you have an area where you have a desert of information, of imagery, you
That's why I
place
got banned on military bases.
more and you get this data, right? It's a really, really smart business model, and they did it via a game. So they essentially were paying nothing to have all of this data collected and all of this information brought into their systems by you know, the word tricking is not right. They were providing a value in terms of entertainment and fun and things like that to the user, but then the user was providing a value back, sort of, you know, unwittingly in a way, and allowing them to sort of map all of the urban environments of the world, which is, you know, like really, really smart on their behalf. And so similar ideas and applications obviously could exist in a future state of what we're building, right? You can start to see how instead of $8 cash, all of these areas have a variety of different reward mechanisms, whether they be crypto token, whether they be, complete these tasks to achieve these levels, to unlock these things, and you get that real gamified aspect.
Yeah, the gears in my mind are turning, thinking about additional ways we can gamify our own network here at Beamable, which for our audience, where a lot of our audience are gamers, because they came to it learning about it through gaming, even though technologically we are like a B2B technology. We support game studios, but a lot of the token audience, I think, are excited about the gaming aspects. I see some other questions coming in back to, it's kind of like business model, but it's the market. You kind of commented a little bit earlier around the many kind of agencies and businesses that buy this kind of imagery data. And could you maybe drill into that a little bit more? Like for the particular kinds of scanning that you're doing with drones in the fly to earn system, who do you see as the most immediate use cases in terms of the buyers of your particular imagery?
Yeah, our very first go-to-market, and Oscar, can I steal the share for a second?
Yeah, of course.
And it'll make a nice connection for the users, the viewers, and the listeners. Our first go-to-market was, we call it a city strategy. So cities are very large consumers of imagery data of their own local municipality, right? The city wants to know what's happening within the city. So very direct use case, and I'll share in a moment. You want to know the right now with all the ESG stuff, you want to know the urban canopy coverage of trees in your city. And you have a target. For 2030, you're looking to increase your urban canopy coverage to improve livability for your citizens, and you want to increase it by 20% in the next 7 years, 5 years. So you need a baseline first. What is our current urban canopy coverage? How many trees do we have now? And then we're looking to increase and improve that urban canopy coverage over the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. So we want to monitor that. Well, we need to see the whole city. We need to see every tree in the city and sort of measure its canopy coverage area to know if we're improving, or if trees are dying, or if they're growing, or the trees we've planted have taken and are starting to shade sidewalks and parking lots, etc. So that's a really like one specific use case that this type of data would be for a municipality, is to monitor that over time so they can refresh the data every year. It's low cost, it's high enough resolution. Now that might be able to be done with existing airplane or satellite data, but may not, depending on the specifications. But another one is like a new development. So I'm a permitting department, and I've just permitted a developer to build a new development on the edge of the city to put in 100 new homes, right? But I want to see how that's progressing, and I want to see it once a month. Just monitor the progress of that development over the next 18 months. Well, it's going to be it's not going to be cost effective at all. It's going to be very costly to try to bring an airplane back and fly that every month, right? That's never going to be cost effective, tens of thousands of dollars every month. It's expensive to send inspectors out to look, and then they're like taking phone cameras, pictures with phones from different places, and I don't have a good I don't get a good sense sort of how things are moving along. They're maybe filling out a report telling me like, oh, this has changed or that's been done, but I don't really know. Or what you can now do with something like Spexi, and let's see if we can pull up this screen share so it makes sense. It's giving me some warnings. I have 2 monitors. I'm going to share that. And so let's see if this pops up. You, Oscar, we're looking at Boulder. These are the images. So as they upload the images,
Oh, cool.
They automatically
Wow.
through a processing pipeline, and then we get it a high resolution aerial image of the city of Boulder.
Wow, that is really cool.
And so
Is that the maximum resolution that you're looking at? Like, is that the LOD, I guess?
that's the current high resolution. Yeah.
Hmm.
So imagine compared to Google Earth, where you would sort of you would lose resolution much sooner. So when a pilot uploads data, it goes automatically in through a processing pipeline that we have. It stitches these panos. So if I want to take a look at this building, but actually I want to see it from the other side, so I'm going to come over here and try to look at it from the other side. And I'm doing some sort of little inspection, or maybe this neighborhood's this neighborhood's under construction. Maybe I want to see that now on a that's a bookmark. Oh, I don't have a time series yet.
Graham, as we're looking at this imagery, first of all, this is just really cool, like tech, looking at like drones have flown out into the world. You've got a mission assignment system. You've got a hex grid that almost gamifies the mission process. You collect it. Then we see these incredibly sharp photos of the surface of these areas relative to what everybody has seen at this point, like the satellite imagery out of Google Earth or Google Maps.
Sure.
But now, why the Web3 aspect of it? You explained earlier you can pay people in cash. If you're a US person flying a US mission, probably US dollars is fine. If you're in Canada, Canadian dollars, probably fine for most people there. You mentioned earlier that it kind of cross-border payments is a good use case for crypto. Is cross-border payments really the issue here, though? Why Web3, I guess, is the question for every DeepIn project.
Sure. There's a few things that it facilitates, and we're firm believers that if you don't have a Web2 business, you won't have a Web3 business, right? Like Web3 is an additive. It's if you don't have, what I mean by a business, if you don't have a revenue generating, like an income stream, like blockchain is a technology. It helps.
Web3 is not creating the need for drone photography.
No, yeah, and for the most part, for me, the real additives of the internet or social media were that you could reach a bigger audience with your business. But the internet didn't make you a business. Right? You had to have a business and then leverage the internet. You built a web page so people could find your business. You had a social media so you could do marketing and outreach to new people. So those technologies were building blocks that allowed you to do new things and expand your business. But the internet was not a business in and of itself. And blockchain, I think, is similar. It's not a business in and of itself. It facilitates certain things that you can now do as a business that maybe you couldn't do before. And so one of the things that we have two major aspects from the pilot side. We think being a part of the network, being invested in the network, adds stickiness. It means that people get to make some decisions around how the network grows and expands. So there's a governance aspect that we're looking at. There's then, as you mentioned, this payment rails. This becomes exponentially more valuable. Geospatial data becomes more valuable to more people as you expand, right? As you get more and more places. And so it was a big lift for us even just to move to the US, right? To set up all of the entities, to create the corporation that was then able to interact with Stripe and do banking and pay these pilots. If we were to think about doing that 200 more times across the world, it's not impossible.
I see. Yeah.
Right?
So as you expand, this is a global need. So as you expand globally, having essentially the payment rails that are inherent in crypto will streamline that whole process, in addition to the governance and the stakeholder alignment aspects of having a token that applies across the project. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a third aspect. So one of the things when you're offering any type of reward or incentive to decentralized users is spoofing. Right? Every DeepIn project runs into this issue of spoofing. Mm-hmm. So, for anyone that doesn't get it right away, someone that's trying to upload a bunch of black pictures and pretend that they're the right pictures by changing the EXIF data or dumbing the EXIF data. And so what we actually do at the time of capture is we have basically a system that we call proof of capture. So at the time that the pilot's on site capturing, we grab some data from the drone and from the device and from the images, and we mint an NFT. So there's an NFT minted that's a proof of capture NFT. So now that pilot can fly multiple missions. As you saw in the previous map, the pilots were flying a bunch of missions in a row, back to back to back, before they upload the data. So they might fly 20 missions, right? They might fly to $8, $8, $8, $8, $8, 20 times. They make $160. They go back to their computer and they upload that data. How do we? That's 2,500 images coming into our pipeline, right? What we do is we take all those images and we match them back against the NFTs that were minted on site. And so now we know that, yes, that image is the image that was created when the pilot flew that mission. It's got all of the correct immutable information from the NFT, and now we can approve the payment to the pilot.
Right. So you effectively have a cryptographic proof that the correct work was actually performed where it was supposed to be performed.
Yeah.
Yes, because you wouldn't be the first time that crypto users try to bot the system and generate rewards without actually doing the work. We've never seen that at Beamable.
Never seen that anywhere.
Right? That have attacked our Quest leaderboard.
Oh, sure.
So we got a million questions coming in, but I have to take a moment here to release the code. A lot of people show up. Speaking of gamification,
I saw there was.
Yeah, we give a code out every live stream because we have a leaderboard where people are competing for points that are going to translate later into an airdrop that we're going to release post TGE. And we have 10,000 people per season that can qualify for that. So it's super competitive. We come from a gaming background, so we gamified the leaderboard a bit ourselves. And we're about to give that code out. I know we don't have the drum roll, do we? Can you do it? Can you do a beatbox? Like what can we do here? I don't think Oscar's amused. Okay, we're going to give out the code though. The code today is transform. TRANSFORM. So we'll pop that into the chat. And hopefully all of you get that. But it's transform. TRANSFORM. Looks like Oscar's lagging a little bit. Inconvenient timing there when we went live with the code. But I did post it in chat. So hopefully you'll all have a chance to use that code and redeem it. If you don't know about the code yet, you got to be registered on our Discord. It's pretty simple. Just be registered there in Discord. Don't be a bot. Type /claim transform. TRANSFORM. You got 2 minutes to do that. And that'll be your proof of participation. We have a similar idea. It's what we call proof of participation here.
Totally. Yeah, that's your Beamable's proof of capture. In the meantime, while people are doing that, I do see an interesting question in the chat that I'll get to in a second. But one of it is gives a powerful idea of how this can be leveraged really quickly. Because one thing we can do very quickly is spin up the pilots again, because everyone wants to earn, right? So if we add more missions to the map, the pilots go out and fly them, and we can vary those incentives that the pilots will receive. So this was St. Louis, and anyone that follows the news will know that a tornado, a pretty big tornado, went through there fairly recently. So that's St. Louis on April 23rd, and that's the same area as St. Louis on May 25th. And so you can quickly spin up a pilot's post-disaster. You do obviously have to be very careful around disaster management because you have entities going in there doing different types of, something like the Texas flooding that's happened right now. You have lots of helicopter rescue. You have lots of flow-flying aircraft. So we don't mess around with an emergency that's sort of active because there are a whole bunch of FAA things you can get into there. But a couple days after it's passed, you can get in and now you can. So now a cleanup crew can, not even a specific cleanup crew, but from a city perspective, I'm a city planner. I want to know how cleanup is going overall. Mm-hmm. I can start to have an idea of what's happening in terms of repair and reparations. You can imagine applications in insurance, right? I've made an insurance claim. I can quickly come in here and see, yeah, okay, your house was very definitely affected by this tornado that just went through. I'm an insurance underwriter. Now I don't need to send an inspector out to the site to verify or ensure that happened. I can see very clearly that it happened. So these are the types of applications from different industries that you could imagine. We've flown several iterations now with LA County post Palisades fire. they're doing a bunch of cleanup and sort of remediation in the Pacific Palisades, north of Los Angeles. So there are lots of both emergency preparedness, emergency management. So we get a base map. Now when we have something like a flood or a tornado or a hailstorm, we can get a post and we can do time series comparison, and that's useful to a whole bunch of people. And so that's much less fun, much less gamified, but the experience obviously still has an opportunity to be gamified and engaging in that way.
Crypto has this question: is your system a middleman, or does it verify everything's done correctly? It kind of relates to the question or the topic that you're just covering around proof of capture and making sure that there is a legitimate upload. But it seems like even beyond just the upload and making sure that the EXIF is what it was at the time it was, there's still like a quality aspect to this too, right? Like you could fly your drone and in theory capture data that's not useful. Or
so as I mentioned off the top, if we jump back to the flights are all automated. The capture is all automated. The pilot is hands off. So you have a specific type of drone, right? With the Mini 2, Mini 3, Mini 4, which have very similar sensor sizes, very similar pixel resolution. And then, so the pilot approaches the area, they connect the drone to the phone through our mobile application, and they essentially hit fly. And then they're hands off. And so the drone, they can launch the drone themselves if they'd like, but essentially the drone will ascend to the specified altitude. It will transit to the waypoint. It will collect the imagery itself, and the pilot is watching. The pilot's there for airspace deconfliction, they're there for safety and regulatory compliance. They can take back control of the drone in time. They can stop the mission essentially. So if you had a low-flying aircraft or helicopter coming through or something like that, they can quickly stop the mission. But otherwise, all of the data capture is happening autonomously. So the camera settings are done autonomously. The altitude is done autonomously. The terrain follow is done autonomously. So if you're on a slope, it's going to capture at 80 meters here, and then it's going to transit upwards to make sure it's capturing it also at 80 meters here, or vice versa. So the pilot doesn't have essentially any control over the imagery data. We take all of that sort of responsibility. And the interesting thing about that is we can adjust and vary the mission type that we load into the zone. So we can fly these, what I shared were these panoramas. So these pano imageries where you can zoom, kind of rotate, pan, tilt, zoom. We're just launching some native mapping missions, which would create an ortho mosaic, like an ortho photo. And if I can, actually, I'm gonna refresh this page, and then Oscar, I'm gonna steal back from you, and we're gonna get back to the gaming use cases, which are a little bit farther out, but not too much. And so if I can steal this. Oh, did you give it back to me?
Yep.
I'm gonna have to switch what I'm sharing. So I'm gonna present something else.
While you're booting that up, there's another question I'll just tee up for you after you get that. King 7 Up is asking, well, what if there's no pilot available nearby? But I think the broader question that kind of provokes is, how time sensitive is a lot of this data? Like, do you need to get a pilot on it fast if a mission opens up? It seems like some stuff is time sensitive. Like if you want to see how a disaster recovery is going in a region, it seems like you're going to need very current information there. Other stuff, maybe it isn't quite so, but is it just come down to scaling out the network and having a lot of pilots competing for the space?
Correct. Yeah. So let's answer that, and I'll jump into what this is. A big part of my job as the operations manager is trying to ensure we have a robust enough community of pilots across North America to be able to respond relatively quickly to any sort of request that we might get from a client. Emergency response and disaster response is one of the hardest for these variety of reasons. There's obviously, people are going through a difficult time. There are maybe other emergency responders there. So there's often power outages and things like that cause problems for cellular outages that cause problems flying the drone. Mostly what we fly and create is a base map. And then that's refreshable on any iteration that is desired. So we could refresh that monthly, or quarterly, or annually, depending on demand. And we think that over time, that requirement for new data for a variety of reasons and sources will probably meet a balancing point in terms of economic viability at around quarterly refreshes for large urban environments, less for more rural or remote environments, maybe. But then if we have these sort of recurring rolling collections, like Uber might have the problem with finding a driver and a ride at the same time, right? They have to balance out. You don't want too many drivers sitting in their cars waiting for a ride. You don't want too many riders waiting around for 20 minutes, half an hour or more to get a ride. So you're constantly playing this game of how many drivers do I have, how many riders do I have? We will have a similar challenge throughout our life. We will have this need to have enough pilots available and active that if something comes up, they will get it in an appropriate period of time, while not having so many pilots that they sort of get bored and churn out of the network because there's not enough for them to do. And so that's a balance that we'll always be playing with. What I've pulled up here is
did you say it's going to be a gaming application? Maybe.
Yeah, well, so what I've pulled up here is we're working with a large gaming entity. This is actually for geospatial AI. Is what they're developing it for. But you can see that this is a Gaussian splat collected.
Mm-hmm.
Imagery was collected by mini drones in London. So this is Leicester Square. And the resolution is such that you can see what movie was playing at the theater. You got the promo for Wicked.
Wicked. Yeah.
You can fully move around in here. And they're working on improving these splats more and more. They're doing some ground-based collection while we do aerial collection, and they merge it all together. It's really, really incredible. The example I like to use with gamers and young kids is like, imagine playing Call of Duty, but it's on your street in your neighborhood, and it's like the car that was parked there yesterday is parked there. Like you're almost playing it like live in augmented reality sort of thing, right? But or virtual reality, like you're in a real metaverse, and that's the gaming application. But the next level application on top of that is what they're calling spatial AI, right? So right now, all our AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, they've been trained on text for the vast majority. Some imagery, they're doing video, they're doing text speech now, but they don't understand the world in a spatial sense, like how big something is, like how do I get around this thing if it's now suddenly in my way, right? Imagine a delivery robot. It's one of these food delivery robots that you see in some of the cities now. And so if it knows the route and it has GPS coordinates, I'm supposed to go from here to here, great, it can do that. It can do it 100 times in a row. Now, if there's suddenly a pile of trash in its way, right? It doesn't know, like, how big is a pile of trash? What does it mean if I have to go around it, if I'm going to go out on the street? So it mostly just like stops. I don't know if you ever saw that the people that were putting the cones on the Waymo cars, because the Waymo car just like went, I don't know what to do. There's a cone on me, right? And so the idea that a number of organizations now are working on is this spatial AI. So basically training an AI model on millions and millions and millions of constantly updated data points from the real world. So it understands, like, a tree looks like this and a building looks like that. And if I want to go around it, I can make this decision based on this information because I now understand the world in a way that I couldn't before from say, text. So that's these applications that we're looking at as bigger applications for the data.
Yeah, and Downey's kind of asking this question around Web3 based AR, VR applications that could utilize drone data. But I mean, you kind of just answered it, which is if you have a lot of photography, you can utilize it. And it wouldn't be limited, I would think, it certainly wouldn't be limited to Web3. Like, I think that's one of the really critical things for absolutely everyone to understand about DPIN, by the way, who's watching this right now. So DPIN is a market which is crypto native in terms of the operator side, like the people who run nodes, whether that's a drone, a node for compute like we have on Beamable, a weather station. You tend to be somewhat crypto native on that side because you're receiving token in exchange for providing that hardware. But the customer side of DPIN, the customer side is not a Web3 market. It's the global market for whatever this is. If it's imagery data, weather data, compute for games to scale up, AI inference for all the AI applications out there. Like, the customers are not limited by being Web3 native. And that's what's very transformative about DPIN. DPIN is a market for the first time really in crypto where the end user, the customer buying it, is everybody. It is not a Web3 market on the customer side. So everyone needs to understand that. And that's why DPIN is such an important category within crypto.
It's the tentacles out into the non-crypto world, right? From the crypto world, it's these tentacles into every industry, every vertical of the non-crypto world. And actually, we recently in Dubai at Token 2049, we announced the launch of Layer Drone, which is actually our crypto entity, right? So Layer Drone will be collecting all of the data, and Spexi becomes what we call a value-added service provider. So it purchases the data in token from Layer Drone. It transforms it in some way, processes it, makes an orthomosaic map, makes a 3D model, does a Gaussian splat, and it sells that onwards for cash into the marketplace or the world. It creates a SaaS product. It does, and we envision lots of value-added service providers pulling from the data to create different, applications, different, value-added products that they will then sell into the marketplace for cash, right? So Layer Drone sells in token, and all of these value-added service providers that are buying that data and transforming it into gaming, they're using it in Unity to create a gaming world. So they're buying the data, they're creating their world, and then they're selling their game. Right.
Well, you're getting into the whole other aspect of Web3, which is the inherent composability that's built into it, which is what I'm trying to beat the drum on as well, because it's something that I think the general crypto market doesn't actually understand how powerful composability is. So when you have protocols talking to each other, where there's, for example, the image capture on your side, and then other applications that can be built on top of that transform the data, make it more accessible or useful for other markets. That's incredibly powerful to have protocols talking to each other. And it's like another fourth or fifth piece of the use cases under your why Web3 discussion we had earlier, which is when you have protocols that talk about this kind of data and automate the utilization of hardware to capture data and then store it and transform it. Now you've actually opened up a whole software development ecosystem where the value exchange is built in to the way these protocols talk to each other, as opposed to the way we used to do things, which is just this whole mosaic of different SaaS applications with intermediate software between everything with their own separate payment rails that are incompatible, have KYC, like all the different issues around that. So composability is a huge game changer that is going to then be the next 10 or 100x on all these DePIN projects after the initial use case is delivered. Because also, again, like we deliver actual customer value now. It's not one of these things where, like, too often in crypto, it's like derivative of a derivative of a derivative, and then suddenly it changes the whole world, right? Like, no, there's an initial market that is served, that can pay now, that needs this stuff. And on top of that, we will then build all kinds of other really compelling applications too.
Yeah, we and others, and that's one of the nice things about decentralization and some of that stuff becoming more open source, is that other people with great ideas and valuable ideas can build on top of that as well.
Graham, really compelling conversation. Wish we had more than an hour to cover this, because there is so much here. I think, first of all, just drones in general, and I hope this opens everyone's eyes to like how important this technology is already and is becoming, how we can decentralize it, the market for this. It's DePIN. It's a great application of DePIN. We started talking about protocols. We could spend a whole bunch of time just talking about protocols and composability. We didn't even explain to people what Gaussian splats are. I have an AI live stream that I do as well. Gaussian splats have been a recurring subject. Just search it online if you want to learn about Gaussian splats. But basically, with a very small number of photos that you take, you can reconstruct a 3D ray traced scene from it. It's super, super interesting in terms of all kinds of applications. If you can imagine being able to populate a 3D world from just a few photos, right?
That's what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So
it's been amazing. Thank you, John, for having me. I love these conversations. It's just fun when it takes its own route and we explore and experience some of these things. And you can, I hope, tell that I'm passionate about it. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in and listened in.
Well, thanks very much to our audience. We got 1,400 of you who have tuned in here live, and I know that this is going to be a popular one probably after the fact as well. So a lot of people are going to view this in replay. If you were one of those, join us next time so you can be one of the folks who asked a question and be part of the live conversation around this. This whole conversation inspires me to set up some panels on some topics as well. Like we could be talking about composability and some of these topics as well in this, and do a real deep dive across multiple projects. So maybe we'll do that next. But Graham, thank you so much for taking part in this. This is it for now. So everybody tune in next time. We're going to keep having these conversations.
Yeah, can I get a Discord link out to people? I mean, you can hit the X or whatever, but I'm not sure if I ended up sharing that with you, Oscar, but please feel free to join the Discord, whether you fly drones or not. What I do is my invite. That might be still copied in my thing. I'm going to give it to the private chat.
Also go to spexi.com, right, which we're putting on the bottom there, and find your Discord from there. But I think that's your call to action, right? So if you're curious about this project, go to spexi.com, go into the Discord, and or write down that crazy alphanumeric code. Or go to spexi.com and click on the Discord.
Spexi, what are we? Spexi Geo on X, I think. Spexi, anywhere you Google it. You can Google it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, Graham. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today. Loved the questions. Super interesting project. Until next time, Graham, this has been fun.
See you, John.